Welcome to this presentation, okay? And I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to stay here and to share some knowledge and some research result that I'm doing at the moment at CEST, okay, and IST, Instituto Superior Técnico, University of Lisbon, okay. Uh, It's part of my thesis, and I did this presentation in one conference, Air Transportation Research Society, in last year. Okay, and I would like to get some to conduct this with a talk with to get some insights and to share some opinion and perspective about this theme. Okay, the theme is non-acoustic indicator associated with noise nuisance generated by air traffic around airports in urban area. I think it's a contemporary question and problem, and many engineers
E,
and public policymakers, for example, that have to face this situation that the airport expansion in urban areas. Uh, let's know a little bit a little bit more about me. Okay. Currently, I'm a professor at Lisbon Lusófona University in transportation infrastructure engineering and member of the Committee of Transport, Infrastructure, and Climate Change for Portuguese-speaking countries here at Lusófona University, and research at CERIS, where I'm doing my PhD in transportation system. My research interests transportation system, air transport and airports, urban air mobility, urban planning, sustainability, transportation economics, and ESG, okay, environment, social, and governance. I think it's an important point when we are talking about a big infrastructure. Transportation is infrastructure, and nowadays, and to contribute to the reduce the impact of these infrastructures in the environment and align with this some uh, points I like to introduce to this theme of research is data science, machine learning, AI application to transport engineering. So it's part of my interests. So let's go on. And here, uh, just a minute. Okay. The outline of this presentation is based on these five topics: introduction, literature review, methodological approach, hypothesis formulation, and conceptual model, and some final remarks. Okay. And let's start with the background, okay? Some empirical evidence to the problem that I'm addressing nowadays with my research. For example, we can see here some uh, news on the press about the situation that some cities, big cities, medium cities, are facing nowadays. For example, plans to expand London City Airport blocked by local authority. Why? London City Airport have been blocked by the airport local authority over concern around the impact of noise pollution. Okay, so it's a serious concern. Who knows? London is a complex city that the airport it's in the middle of the city and can cause many negative impact to the citizens there. The same thing here we can face in Lisbon, and we have here, for example, the costs of the noise nuisance around the airport in Lisbon. around the cost is around 3.5 million euros, a staggering figure that takes into account the impact on health, work productivity, and real market. And one more we have here in Florida, United States. For example, Florida Naples Airport Authority has new leadership for its noise compatibility committee. Consists of 90 citizen volunteers who help monitor the impact of aircraft noise on the local community and make recommendations on noise mitigation procedures. Well, I can name here several examples around the world. For example, in Brazil, São Paulo, we have an airport in the middle of the city that has some operation limitation. For example, at 11 p.m., the airport has to close and just open 7 p.m. a.m. in another day. Okay, so the in this case, the noise nuisance during the night was terrible for the people who lived around the airport there, and so the popular pressure to the authorities uh, make to the airport operations procedures. Uh, Following ahead, we have here, for example, uh, according to the literature, we have the background research findings, and I try to have here a timeline for this situation based on the literature. Traditional approaches have been limited to only considering the noise level in the lanes around the airport. At the beginning of the studies, the first studies about this, for example, this situation, this problem, some engineers or authorities, local authorities, focus on just around the airport. Okay, consider the lanes, so say the operation, the takeoff and landing of the aircraft. But time goes on, and we can observe that the noise nuisance does not only depend on the level of the exposure to the sound emitted by the source. Okay, we have a bunch of activities around the airport, okay, to support the operation of the airport and contribute to the noise nuisance around these areas. And uh, later, we can see that only, for example, some studies show that only a third of the variation of the noise nuisance can be explained by acoustic factors. Okay, at the beginning of the time of this problem arises, some studies focus on the emission or the source of emission. That's the main problem at that time. So continuing with this, we can see some uh, evaluation about this problem. For example, it has been postulated that there is no single underlying relationship associated with traditional response functions, okay? Function response to the emission according to some measures that some studies pointed, but it's much more complex than this. And around nowadays, when the problem come up again, so we have, for example, that the transportation and the engineers should consider non-acoustic factors as a social and environment determinants on health, equity, and environment justice. Some studies can show that, for example, some heart conditions, blood pressure situations, and sleeping problems can affect or have a strong impact in the health or in the well-being of people around the airports. And found some correlation with these operations and the health condition of the people around this airport compared with the other that are far from the airport. Thus, leading research consider different factors such as perceptions, attitude, environment, demographic, and social aspect in this equation or in this problem or to trying to modeling uh, this problem nowadays. Based on this, okay, and aligning with this situation, the research is according to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for example, the good health and well-being in the cities, industry, innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, partnership for the goals that we have to do. Nowadays, some concepts with air, for example, green airports, aligning with the principles of ESG, or say environment, social, and governance, or sustainability principles, for example, that can be one of the perspective for researchers, transportation and engineers, and authorities around the world. We have to align all these principles and to think in a better infrastructure that we can build around the world and provide a good wealth and well-being and not harm. For example, the construction of airport, because we have to recognize it's important for the development of many regions and cities around the world. Okay, is a vector of development, but how to conciliate with the other questions or situations, social and environment issues. Uh, Thinking about sustainable airport, we have some developed areas. For example, here, according to the main challenges encountering in producing a sustainable airport area, Metropolis workshop, uh, that took place once or several times. Some points could be, for example, considered in the project of airport or to manage the air traffic around or over the cities, no? Over the cities or big city or urban areas. We have, for example, social inclusion, urban planning and development, governance, mobility and accessibility, actions in favor of the environment, the whole of the airport area in this region, vision and strategy, competitiveness. Okay, we have several points that we have in marketing. Okay, how to, for example, this involve the reputation of the airport or the companies that are in this industry. So how people can see in a better way or how without harming the business, but at the same time have some concern with the social and environment questions, okay, or issues. Uh, so based on this, my research or this background or this first search, I here have my objective or the objective of the researchers was investigate the relationship between the construct that can explain possible causal link between non-acoustic factors and noise nuisance due to the air traffic in urban areas. Uh, Based on this, we have some specific objectives. For example, identify the noise nuisance attributes of air transport or transportation, categorize attributes into groups or factors, examine the relative importance of these attributes on perceived noise nuisance, and evaluate the possible cause and effect relationship between the identified factors. At this point, my present research is in this part here. Identify and categorize the attributes, okay, and group them in factors and to further in another stage to create a model or to better understand the correlation between this factor and propose one, for example, better understand of the phenomenon. Based on this objective, raised the research questions. What are the possible non-acoustic factors that best describe the air traffic noise nuisance? This is challenging for many research around the world. Once in the past, some of them believed that the situation was resolved, but nowadays the problem come up again. What are the possible covariance between such variables and latent factors, okay? Some variables that we can measure directly, but based on other variables. That's the question, because noise nuisance, I cannot ask directly for the people because people are react differently for the same situation. And what are the presumed cause and effect relationship of given stochastic model? So now at the present, I'm trying to answer the first one. So the first question. In another stage of my research, I'm going to advance in the other questions. So relevance of the study. This specific investigation, for example, is based on the following points: developer research and professional knowledge and competences on the topic, reviewed based on a scientific perspective. Okay. Uh, Provide this scientific understanding of the relationship that govern the perceptions of nuisance generated by air transport noise. Okay. Present to transport systems professionals and urban planners a reference to the airport and air traffic planning policies formulation in urban areas. Okay, so based on this, I have the literature review here. So just one model that based in my research is the fundamental of my research in this stage. Let me see here, for example, that we have a theoretical framework based on the um, Stalin model that we can see we have two processes to identify the noise nuisance, the external process and the internal process. In the first part, okay, we can see the external process. So some individuals can uh, realize that, for example, what's the whole of the source that emit the sound or the noise and how they are managed for the authorities. Based on this, they have an idea of the noise annoyance or disturbance. And based on this, start the internal process, the internal process of this situation. For example, annoyance generated by noise, how it is. This is a general model that can explain the air traffic or air traffic noise nuisance in urban areas. And aligned with this, we can see that the first one is not okay for the individuals. For example, how people, how authorities are managing the noise around the airport, for example, and the source, and what is the source, so they perceive it control coping may be not sufficient to deliver the problem. So other facts related to the attitude may be considered. That's the point that I'm doing here in my research, trying to find these other factors, non-acoustic factors, because the acoustic factor is in the problem, of course, but we have it to consider more complex issues that can be part of the problem. Uh, well, go on and move on and with this and the literature review, I could see that, for example, some researchers or scholars have proposed one way to identify these indicators, noise strategic indicators. According to Pronell and Camuso, for example, they have a paper that describe this process to identify these indicators or no or other acoustics and non-acoustics indicators. For example, environmentals or noise annoyance indicator to be identified based on one situation or one characteristic of the area. For example, subjective noise sensitivity, just a few of aspects that can be used or identified at the first stage of the research. Attitude toward noise, attitude toward traffic, noise awareness level, personality traits, health conditions, and social factors, all aligned with other that we can identify in a more comprehensive study in other stages. Um, well, that's a model, okay, to try to identify this indicator. I'm working on this at this stage of my research that's trying to group or how to or nowadays how people are saying that it's a feature engineering, okay, identify some key factors or key variables that can use it to have a model. Uh, Another situation that can help us to identify the importance of this factor is, for example, uh, the importance of explanatory factors for noise nuisance, according to Bauer. Okay, we have two axes here. For example, the horizon axis, we have a grade of low to high that can explain, for example, the what can be modified in the perception of attitudes or to relate or something related to the noise annoyance around some areas. Some of them are very difficult to modify. For example, gender, age, residential size, for example, or uh, culture or aircraft view. Some of them are over our head, and so can sometimes you are in one situation or in one place that you can see the visual, okay, the visual of the aircraft over some people can be terrifying. Uh, Degree of urbanization, okay, we are going up in this scale, and we can see that there are some of in blue here higher in, for example, importance, and that can be modified, modify the perception and the attitude of some people that live around the airport. Okay. Uh, to name a few here, according to this graphic, we have the attitude toward the airport, okay, how people see airports or airports to the development or social or environment. Justice perception, okay, is it okay the measure to mitigate the noise nuisance? Trust or abuse of the authority. Sometimes it's not okay. For example, we have some people that to be reallocated to some places and some compensation cannot be just for them. The control and confrontation, uh, satisfaction with the or some temporal factors. All these are some examples of variables or features that can be worked later or in a model, can put in a model and see how the relationship with the noise nuisance can be associated. Okay. Uh, well, methodological approach. No? Let's see how I intend to approach this problem or this issue in my research. First of all, of course, I have to do a literature review, and I did. I'm doing all the time and try to find for a certain limit to have a the most comprehensive information about the problem. So first, we have a key record identified through database search, and additional record identified through other source. So I'm going to, or we have to remove a duplicate record, for example, and screening records can give to the research some information that no paper, for example, did not meet the selection criteria, can be relevant. So, and I see more eligible full papers to use, and even and even though we can get here some deleted full papers, inadequate, irrelevant, or just the title, or just uh, the the research is not to do does not have to do with the research that I'm conducting. And finally, I have the paper included in the literature review. Okay, just the screening and the process of the literature review can be this or other one, but just to show one that I chose to my research. And the research process comprise, for example, the decision-making process, formulation, theory, research approach, research question, and hypothesis. That's the part that the primary part of the research, I think. And development, sampling design, data collection and preparation, data analysis techniques, uh, and we can go further to analysis, statistical analysis, inferences, result and conclusion or limitation, or other, or nowadays, as many people or many research or many professionals are using as an emergent tendencies or best practices, maybe. We have to be careful with this, using machine learning and artificial intelligence. Nowadays, the part of my research is concentrated in the formulation, as I'm presenting here for everybody here in this forum. So, hypothesis formulation, conceptual model. Uh, in this situation, for foresight can be modified, of course, because I'm still in the phase of the feature engineering to find another variables or characteristics that can be uh, added to the framework or to this structural model, okay, that can try to explain the perceived noise or air traffic noise nuisance. So all these factors at first, for example, satisfaction with residential area, inference in the activities. People sometimes don't get, for example, to sleep well during the night due to the traffic operation, air traffic operation, 24 hours a day. So the residential area, we have the impact on the real estate market. Uh, People don't see that the authority are not coping with the noise nuisance around, and this can uh, bring the perceived noise, and control and mitigation measures sometimes are not sufficient for this, and people perceive the the noise in different ways, and most of the time with some concerns with the noise annoyance. Well, case studies. I intend to do, for example, two case studies. Lisbon airport with this characteristic. We can see that's in the middle of the city of Lisbon. At the surrounds, we can see that we have many living areas, and this can be complicated for those who live close to the airport. Here we have some characteristics of the airport according to National Agency, Air National Agency of Portugal, and the characteristic of the airport, capacity, air operations, attitudes, runaways, né, and directions, or something like that, two runaways. And another one is São Paulo Airport. As you can see, is a complicated situation that we have here because around the airport, we have many living areas. And 2007, I think, we had a terrible accident. One aircraft during the landing just don't stop at the end of the lane and just hit some buildings close to the lane. Okay, it was terrible. Many people died. It was so since then, so many other measures of security has been taken into consideration. Here we have the capacity of the airport, okay, and some characteristics. So, and you have it, I want to take into consideration this comparison that can be raised some, for example, cultural perspective from Europe or Latin America or Brazil, for example, compared to Europe or something like that. Okay, the study can show us or reveal something related to this. Or it is if the model can be reproduced in another context. So data collection and analysis. The metropolitan region residents around the Humberto Delgado Airport in city of Lisbon, the metropolitan region residents surrounding Congonhas Airport in the city of São Paulo. I brought here two pictures of the situation. The first one, the up is Lisbon, and below we have São Paulo, just to see how complicated is the situation and to see the aircraft just from your window. It's not a comfortable I think that is not comfortable for residents in this region. So data collection analysis, sample design. Okay, I think to have a rigor in data collection to have the better result as possible. And some data collection analysis, for example, questionnaire will be developed, web-based survey of a database preparation. Web-based survey, I have some concern because I tried one pilot study and the response rate was very low. I think I have to think, I'm thinking and preparing another way to collect this data in a way that I have more responses to the questionnaire and see to have a best quality of the data. And some preparation, okay, exploratory data analysis, data mining, and techniques, for example, dimensionality reduction, exploratory factor analysis first, principal component analysis, and analyze the model, a structure equation model. Okay, using these techniques to meet the perception and the relationship among the variables selected. And I intend to use, okay, according to the situation, is it possible, some machine learning and AI techniques, regression support and artificial neural network, and compare the models, okay, and to see what model is more suitable for the situation. For example, can explain or complement the understanding of the problem. So final remarks. The airport mode noise nuisance is one of the concerns of urban planners and infrastructure engineers. Sprawling, for example, the urban area must be taken into consideration because sometimes the airport is planning in a moment that the airport is far from the cities, but the city is going toward to the airport. Technologies our operational strategy has been not sufficient to overcome the noise nuisance. We have to consider other facts. The growing concern for the environment has led engineers develop sustainable projects. Okay, nowadays is a strong pressure for the new generation of engineers, for example, that have this awareness about the impact of not only the positive, but the negative impact of the infrastructure or the building infrastructures. Uh, the use of indicators, attributes, social and environment theoretical framework reviewed and updated. Okay, nowadays we have to update these frameworks and to see what variables or features can be suited for the new model or for the previous model. Okay. And some non-acoustic factors considered at the first hand due to air traffic in the vicinity of the airport, according to academic literature, are related to, according to my survey, according to my first stage of the research. Attitude toward the airport is important, how people behave facing this problem. Airport authority support, okay, it's okay or not okay. Noise nuisance perceptions, inferences in activities, interferences in activities. People sometimes don't get, for example, to read a book or to watch TV or work in the places because the interferences of the noise can be complicated. Control and mitigation of measures and satisfaction with a residential area. And air traffic noise nuisance, we have to consider, according to this first stage of the research, is a multi-factor phenomenon. So multivariate analysis approach should be considered. No? A specific model can be developed to address an observable or latent variables, endogeneity among variables, the complex underlying data structure encountered in social phenomena intertwining transportation applications. I think it's a key point for the transportation engineers. In addition, proper conceptual framework allow a researcher to assess better the theories and hypotheses or compare alternative models. All right. And I think I have just one more slide. Understanding the airport externalities and socioeconomic activities in the surrounds are essential to not harm the airport potential as a vector of development. We are talking about here ASEG principles. We have to conciliate economic situation, economic development, social issues, and environmental issues. Okay. Through this perspective, it's possible to meet a well-being and sustainable indicators that can enable the analysis of the region and cities, simulate scenarios with strategies to be implemented, and support public authorities, urban planners, infrastructure engineers, and transport operations in decision-making process. And future research. I brought these pictures here to think about a little bit over this device or new perspective. For example, we are talking about the eVTOL, electronic vertical takeoff land vehicles that are nowadays is one of the possible situations or the possible solution or can help to mitigate or to have more sustainable cities, smart cities, consider urban plan and transportation issues. Okay, this for example, we can create one way to have how people can travel over the cities for short or middle distance with this kind of vehicle. Okay. Let me see. Okay, thank you for the attention, and I'm open for the Q&A session.